I can probably name about a handful of times in my adult life where I've been a victim of spiking, whether that's somebody that I knew or a complete stranger. But the most prevalent and personally shocking experience for me was back in 2020, just after the first lockdown. It was the first time I'd seen my friends for months, the same way as anyone else, and we were just having lunch in one of our favourite restaurants, and I ended up leaving in the back of an ambulance and waking up in A&E. I think at the time it was really hard to kind of think about what symptoms I was experiencing. It definitely felt a bit more like an out-of-body experience. I don't think it's until after where we look back at photos we'd taken of the afternoon and selfies we'd taken where we could see that the drug had started to kick into my body. So for me, my eyes were unable to focus, parts of my face had started to drop. And I think, my best friend told me that there was one particular sentence that I'd said that didn't particularly make sense just before we went to the toilets where I'd passed out. It's really important to share my experience just because I think victims, and I'm myself included in that, feel weird levels of shame and guilt that they think it's their fault. Sometimes I go through it now when I talk about it. I wonder, is it my fault? Did I do something wrong? Is there something I could have done differently to kind of lower the chance that either myself or any of my friends I was with got spiked? And I have to sit there and remember that it is never my fault. It doesn't matter where I was, who I was with, what time of day it was, what I was wearing. It's always the fault of the perpetrator and never the victim. And I think that, because I've been a victim myself, I can resonate and empathise with victims' needs to feel heard. If people don't speak about it, don't share their experiences, then how are we going to tackle a problem like this? And it would get to a point where it becomes epidemic levels like it has now. There's a kind of a mixed range of reasons and motivations as to why people choose to potentially spike someone else. For a lot of people, it's their own friends that have done it to them. If they don't drink or they don't want to participate in party drugs, for example, their friends might just put it in their drink to loosen them up or make them seem more fun. But other times it's to lower a person's inhibitions, either for purposes of assault or for things like theft. I've worked in central government for 6-7 years, and I've worked in a variety of different areas, including policy creation. So for me, my journey isn't just about sharing my experience. I actually want to be able to drive real change for victims and to kind of create a safer society. Sometimes I get slut shamed, sometimes I'm told that I deserve it or I've asked for it, or that I don't have a sense of humour, or I should find things funny, when realistically they're not funny ever. I think that there are a lot of things that we are missing out on and putting the emphasis on what we can do after as opposed to what we can do before. 10 years ago I was sat in school doing PHSE about things like drugs and sex and things like consent, and spiking with recreational drug or with alcohol are talked about very minimally, or if ever at all. A lot of the young people that have reached out to me, start at the age of 14. They're in school now and they don't have any education on that either. I believe that proactive preventative measures are more important than some of the measures that some establishments have put into place. I do see that putting, for example, lids on drinks can cause a deterrent to perpetrators. If you make it more difficult for somebody to actually spike someone via their drink, they're less likely to. But, we're seeing it now that if they can't put something in your drink, that my fear is they'll move to a completely different way of spiking, more prevalently in student venues and student nights, is that we're now seeing people being spiked with injections, which obviously causes a higher risk in terms of physical health as well as mental health. I think I've said on multiple occasions I couldn't get into a nightclub at 18 with chewing gum in my bag, so I don't understand how people can get in with a syringe. So I think, for long-term benefit for society, it needs to be more proactive rather than reactive.